All right, welcome to the first episode of The Catching Corner. I'm Eric Jones.
I'm Bill Leroy.
We are Savannah Bananas catchers, and we're going to be talking about all things catching related, life related, and let's just get right into it. So the first thing we got planned is talking about why we catch. It's not something that everybody just gets into on their own. I'm interested in the story of how you got started catching, Bill, why you got behind the plate, and why you do what you do.
Man, what a great question. It's not for the faint of heart, and it's a difficult position, but it's a fun position. And catching's not for everybody. I'll tell you that. It's not an easy position, but it's the most fun position in the whole world. You're involved in every single pitch. You're the only position in any sport that plays out of bounds. Fun fact about catching, I don't know if you ever heard that before. We're the eyes of the field, we're the captains, so it's not for everybody. And I started catching way back in the day because nobody else wanted to. I started as an infielder, working on my hands and trying to be athletic. And then nobody else in our team wanted to get back there. Nobody wanted baseballs chunked at them. Nobody wanted to get in front of them. And I had no idea what I was doing, But, I remember vividly, I was about probably 10 years old playing shortstop. We didn't have a catcher one weekend. They tossed me back there. And I remember just like balls were thrown left and right. I had no idea how to block a baseball, but I was just diving left, diving right, just trying to get my body in front of it. And that's how I started catching, man. It's just nobody else wanted to do it. I wasn't scared to get a baseball chunked at me, and now we're here.
That's awesome, man. It's really similar to how I ended up catching too, because it wasn't something that like I sought out as necessarily wanting to do. And now it's different because I do want to catch, but back then I was catching because it kind of just fit my skill set. So I had a good arm and I could catch everything. I could always pick the ball in the dirt. Never had anybody teach me how to block, never liked blocking. But never felt like I needed to because at the time it's a little league or whatever. The kids aren't throwing that hard. I could pick everything, and I wanted to play. So it just kind of made sense that I went back there, and like you said, you can see the whole field. You can captain the entire game. And once I learned how much strategy goes into being a catcher, calling pitches for your pitchers, I really started to enjoy it, and I always loved throwing people out. Anytime I would get challenged back there, it was like I just was praying that they would try to steal because I knew I was going to throw them out. And then on the smaller fields, the back picks were everywhere too. People are just starting to learn how to run the bases, and I could see when somebody was a little too far off or when somebody wasn't paying attention enough, and boom, I could change the game just like that. So that began, and that was in Little League. That began my appreciation and love for catching. The next thing I was wondering is if there's anybody that you feel like when you were young or even now, developing as a catcher that like really inspired you and kind of like shaped the way that you looked at the catcher position.
That's a great question, EJ. Two things. One, I didn't want to be like Danny Hosley. I knew, I didn't know the guy at the time,
No.
but I just knew he was out there somewhere in the world, and I didn't want to be like that guy. Two, yeah, man, there's many catchers that I grew up watching and wanting to be like. And Yadi Molina is one of them. I mean, he's the legend. He's the GOAT. Talk about back picks. That guy is disgusting and throwing guys. There's nothing more satisfying than throwing runners out, and that guy did it with the absolute best of them. Buster Posey was an incredible person to watch and try to mimic my game after as well. But yeah, there's many catchers that Joe Mauer. Gosh, there's so many names out there that we could toss out. But there's a lot of guys that have done it really well for a long time. And just, kind of been a blessing to be able to have people to look up to,
Yeah, a couple for me. Johnny Bench was kind of the first one that he wore number 5, just big frame, just like good ball player. And then Javi Lopez, I would watch the Braves. He was their catcher. So I'd watch him. I got the chance to meet Johnny Bench when I was in college. And it was really cool, just kind of hero of the game, but I got to shake his hand. And, there's that famous picture of him holding, might be 6, might be 8 baseballs, I'm not sure, but I shook his hand and it just ate mine. And I was like, wow, like that's a man's hands right there. And it's funny because I've seen the same thing around some of the other catchers that I've been around. getting to be, and one of the next things I want to talk about is kind of like your trajectory to getting here as a catcher. And I got to be a bullpen catcher for the Seattle Mariners in 2022, and I shook and dapped up Cal Raleigh's hand, and I was like, oh my Lord, that's a big hand. And I feel like that's one of the things that you see just kind of throughout baseball in general, but especially with catchers, because as we're catching that ball into us, it's so important that we're strong with it, that we control the ball. And I think, big hands help you do that. And I think catching helps you develop that trait. But yeah, kind of like I was talking about earlier, tell me a little bit about the catching trajectory that you took and your path to getting to Banana Land as a catcher.
It's another great question. I want to back up, though, and say two things about catchers that inspired me, because I feel like I left a couple out. One is Eddie Perez. I've got the privilege to hang out with Eddie. Shout out my friend Andres Perez, another catcher of mine, 6'8", 240-pound beast of a man. Absolutely genuine human being as well. If you're watching this, love you, man. Watching that guy catch, and watching his dad catch, Greg Maddux, all those legendary videos of him stealing strikes on that two-seam inside, and working with him, and how they called pitches, and that guy's, he's one of the best to ever do it. And watching those old videos is something you can pull so much knowledge from. And also Johnny Bench as well. Meeting him in West Palm a couple years ago, his hand literally almost broke mine. And he put his hand in my glove, and I was like, Johnny Bench put my glove on. Like, that's insane. But it's probably ruined because his hands are so bad. So, but yeah, those two guys. As for my trajectory, how I got here to Banana Land, catching wise, I started way back in the day when I was about 10 in travel ball, just trying to learn the basics and, learn how to block, learn how to receive, all that stuff. And you kind of learn the technique. And then, in that middle school and high school range, more in high school, I learned how to call pitches and got, the trust of my coaching staff to be able to call my own pitches, and got to do that, for a while through high school, and learn like what pitch, goes off another. So in high school, I developed a lot of skills of calling pitches and, mastering my technique of blocking and throwing, and love to throw. I love throwing guys out of second, back pick, and learning the times to do that. So, my knowledge, my IQ grew a lot in the high school time frame. Then I went to North Georgia, University of North Georgia. And I didn't start right away. I was a DH for a couple of years there, but got to catch a lot of bullpens, and got to catch beside my friend Andres Perez, and learned a lot from him. And it wasn't until my probably junior year when I caught for University of North Georgia, but every summer I got invited to be at Banana Land, and I got to catch pretty much every home game, and a lot of games on the road in Banana Land. And funny story how I got to Banana Land. I was at North Georgia my sophomore year of college, and I talked to my coach, and they were like, I think we have this temporary contract position to go play for the Savannah Bananas in the summer. I was like, I have no idea who the Savannah Bananas are, but sure, why not? Like the year before, I went home and cut grass, and I was like, I'm not trying to do that. So I was like, I'll go play ball. And I got a random phone call from an Arizona number while I was going to Chow one day, Chow Hall on University of North Georgia campus. And I was joking with my friends, Andres and a couple other guys that were there. As we were walking, I was like, this is the Arizona Diamondbacks calling me. I was like, watch this. Picked up, and I was like, this is Bill Leroy, University of North Georgia catcher, number 28. Like, just like joking around, like ready for the draft, blah, blah, something like that. And it was Coach Gillum. It was Coach Gillum. He was like, well, hey, Bill, how's it going? This is Tyler Gillum, head coach from South Mountain Community College and head coach of the Savannah Bananas. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, well, what a way to meet you. I was joking around. And so that kind of hit it off with us. And I was on a temporary contract position to come down here, but I ended up making a good relationship with him and Jesse and, a lot of the people here. And they fell in love with me, and I fell in love with them. And I got to catch a lot here and catch some really high quality arms, guys who are throwing really hard, guys who have disgusting pitches. And like, I really gained a lot of skills playing here in the summer, because just the level of play was higher than I ever had before. So that was kind of the funny story how I got here, and I just gained a lot of skills throughout the years, and I've just never left, man. And now we're on this crazy banana ball journey where now I'm learning to dance, and now I'm learning to entertain. Wow. So, I feel like I started with technique, my IQ grew, my talent grew because of the people that I was around, and now we're even adding another layer of entertainment to it. So that's my story.
Man, you've never told me that story before. You talking to Coach Gillum for the first time, but that is so fitting. It's so perfect. It's such an introduction to who you are, just right off of the bat before he's even seen you. And I feel like it's that type of like personality and just willingness to riff and do things that really like fits in well here. A little bit about my trajectory as a catcher. So catcher was my definitely primary position all the way through Little League. I'd play some third base too, but it was catcher, and I was catching like every game. And then when so I didn't actually have middle school baseball. I lived in Alabama at the time. Didn't have middle school baseball, just played travel ball. Again, mainly catching. And then got to high school, and there's some older guys that caught a little bit. So that was kind of my first. Well, I also like played shortstop. Kind of have a complicated trajectory. Was in Alabama for middle school. Moved to North Carolina. Did the 8th grade again because when I was in Alabama, all those kids were older and I was younger, and my dad saw how much of an advantage that was to be older. So when I moved to North Carolina, I reclassed. 8th grade, played a lot of shortstop and pitcher. Get to high school, playing mainly second base, a little bit of catcher, and then at the end of my high school career, shortstop, catcher, some third. Get to college, there's a little bit older catcher. So I'm DHing a lot my freshman year, and then my sophomore year, everyday third baseman. My junior year, tear my labrum, mainly catching that year on a torn up shoulder. So that was quite an experience, just managing the pain, everything. All this is to say, it's been like on and off again for me catching. I always feel like the more that I get to do it, the better I am. And it's one of those things where if you take a significant amount of time off, you know, you kind of have to re-feel everything out with your legs, staying in the squat. And then once I get to pro ball, I'm playing a lot of first base, left field, some third base. And then even here, it's that utility role. So I've always loved playing all the positions, getting to do everything. But the ability to control the game at catcher is truly special. And yeah, on this podcast, I just want to talk about, you know, the art of catching, not even just necessarily at the catcher position, but, you know, catching, it's essential in baseball and period, but, you know, in life too, you catch opportunities, and just think it's going to be fun to chat together about. Going to wrap this first episode off here. Got a lot of good info, getting to know the both of us, and we're going to be talking about a lot of fun things in the future. And thank you for listening, Bill. Thank you for chatting. You got anything you'd like to say, signing off?
To all my young catchers out there, keep grinding. Don't be scared of the baseball. And if you're watching this, hope you can pick up some knowledge and tag along this journey with us and learn from us. So appreciate you guys listening.
Hey, that's a wrap for the first episode. Catch you later.
That was fun, bro. That was good.
Thanks.
I'll send you later. That was good.
Come on, I thought about that one. Come on.